Kate Storey, the author of White House by the Sea, A Century of the Kennedys in Hyannisport. In my new book, I tell the story of America's most famous family through the lens of their homes on Cape Cod. I interviewed a dozen members of the Kennedy family that shared personal stories about their lives in Hyannisport. Here are 5 things I learned. When JFK's parents, Rose and Joe Kennedy, were newly married and living in Boston, they started looking for a place to spend their summers. Their first choice was Cohasset, Massachusetts, about an hour south of Boston. But when Joe applied to be a member of the golf club, he was rejected because he was Irish Catholic. In the late 1920s, the Kennedys began renting in Hyannisport, which is a tiny neighborhood on the south side of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where Joe was welcomed to the golf club. In 1928, they bought the home they'd been renting, which was called the Malcolm Cottage, and they doubled it in size with a massive renovation. The family has been going to Hyannisport ever since. Shortly after JFK proposed to young Jacqueline Bouvier, he brought her back to Hyannisport to meet his family. I spoke to the photographer who met the couple at the airport, who told me about Jackie's first trip to the family compound. Jackie played baseball with the family and went sailing, where she felt the most comfortable on the water. After the trip, she wrote to Rose Kennedy to say, "It seems to me that very few people have been able to create what you have, a family built on love and loyalty and gaiety. If I can even come close to building that with Jack, I will be very happy." In 1962, the second year of JFK's presidency, flyers were posted across the South advertising rides for Black Americans and promising jobs with the Kennedys when they arrived to the Cape. But it was all a cruel scheme cooked up by a racist organization called the White Citizens Council. The busloads of people gave up everything they had to start a new life in Massachusetts, but there were no jobs there when they arrived. The Kennedys were unsure about how to respond, and so they turned to their neighbor, a woman named Eugenia Forts, one of the founders of the Cape Cod NAACP. Forts made sure the families had a place to stay and food to eat. Today, the only public beach in Hyannisport is named for Eugenia Forts. I learned a lot about Rosemary Kennedy's life in Hyannisport. Rosemary was JFK's younger sister. What most people know about Rosemary is that she had an intellectual disability and mental health issues, and that her father arranged for her to have a lobotomy when she was 23 years old. The procedure was catastrophic, leaving her unable to live alone and barely able to speak for the rest of her life. Through extensive interviews with the Kennedys and their neighbors, I learned a lot about Rosemary's early life in Hyannisport, where she sailed with her sister Eunice and went to dances with her brothers Joe and Jack. After the lobotomy, she was sent by her father to live in an institution in Wisconsin and unable to see her family for decades. But after her father Joe died, Rosemary's mother Rose brought her back to Hyannisport, where she spent all of her summers until her death in 2005. Thanks to the Kennedys, many celebrities have passed through Hyannisport over the years. Of course, there were the politicians like JFK's Vice President LBJ, but there were also celebrities like Frank Sinatra and his young girlfriend at the time, Mia Farrow, who took their yacht to visit the Kennedy compound. In the 1980s, Maria Shriver and Arnold Schwarzenegger's wedding brought huge stars like Andy Warhol and his model date Grace Jones. When they arrived late, they caused quite a scene. There was also Maria's friend Oprah, who came to visit the Kennedy compound a couple of times, but was so overwhelmed by all of the activity that at one point she hid in the bathroom to take a breather.